Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Drop Point. I'm really excited about today's guest because he's bringing a perspective that we have not had on the show yet. He's not just an operator, he is also a writer and a voice in this industry that a lot of people in propane are already paying attention to. Aaron, please forgive me. I don't know how to say your last name.
It's Huizenga, and most people get it wrong.
Okay, so Aaron is the East Division Manager at Lakes Gas, which is the largest family-owned propane company in the upper Midwest. He is a regular columnist for LP Gas magazine, where he writes about leadership, mentorship, and what it actually takes to build and run a strong propane operation. He's also an active participant at the NPGA level, which means he has a view of this industry from the field all the way up to the national conversation. But before we get into it, as we always say, if you have not already, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now so that way you can be notified when we have new episodes. And we've got a great lineup this year. We've got some scheduled already, and they're going to be great guests that are deep in this industry. And subscribing is the best way for you to make sure you don't miss any of that. Anyway, Aaron, welcome to the Drop Point. Thank you so much for being here. We're really glad to
Thank you.
have you. And Brian, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Perfect. Thanks, Jackie. Aaron, it's really great to have you on the show with us today. So before we get started, if you could just give us the nickel tour of Aaron Huizenga, talk about your experience in the propane, where you started and where you're at today.
So my experience is I've been in it about 12 or 13 years now. I started right after the winter of 2013, 2014, which a lot of us remember. So that was my indoctrination to the industry. I think I started in May, right after all of that happened. I started with Feral Gas as a general manager for them. Worked through that for several years. Became a regional vice president for them, and then had the opportunity to move over to Lakes Gas here in Wisconsin about 6 years ago. Got that call from Trent Hampton and was happy to get that call and have loved every minute of it since. I don't think I've actually worked. I shouldn't say this out loud. I don't think I've actually worked a day in the last 10 years or so because I'm passionate about what I do. I love what I do. I'm excited to get out of bed in the morning and just do my thing.
Yeah, that's when you're in this business, if you enjoy it, it's not coming to work every day, right? And that's the same thing I tell people when I hire them. You'll know within the first year if this is for you. And if it is, I hate to say it this way, but you're stuck. You will be in this
Mhm.
business the rest of your life, right?
It's ironic that you say that. When I came into the industry, somebody said that. They're like, "Well, welcome to propane. You're never leaving," which was a little, which was a little scary at first. I'm like, okay, well, that's weird, but
Yeah,
it's just a great group of people in this industry, and I really can't see myself being anyplace else.
perfect. So I have a few questions for you today. I'll ask some questions and I'll flip it over to Justin. So feel free to expand upon any answers you have, or if we find something that we kind of want to pull on that thread, we'll pull on that thread a little bit. But first, you've been writing a regular column for LP Gas magazine for a while now. Your topics generally go operations, leadership, mentorship, management styles. How did that column come to be, and why do you use that platform the way that you do?
For me, it started about 3 years ago. I was asked to be part of the leadership in Energy Ambassadors first class through PERC. And one of the items that we were tasked with at the end of that course was communicating locally with news outlets and writing editorials for newspapers, hosting town hall meetings. I've always enjoyed writing. I've never really had a medium to do it with. So I found that I started writing stuff on a weekly basis. I was posting it on LinkedIn, and I wrote about propane specifically or strictly for the first 6 months or so. And after I got into it, and don't get me wrong, I love the industry, but I got tired of writing about just propane because there was so much more that was kind of boiling up inside of me and said, hey, people are reading this, people are following this. And let's start talking about something else that you're passionate about. And as I started to do that a couple of months in, I ran into Brian Richardson from LP Gas Magazine when we were at Propane Days in Washington, D.C. And we were just at one of the receptions or having a cocktail, something like that. And we started kicking around the idea of a column. And he had said, well, do you think you could generate content for a column. I'm like, well, if you want content, I can definitely handle that. Reams of content that we can start breaking down. He actually has to rein me back in when I write some of these monthly pieces. They're 2 and 3 times longer than my allotted space in the magazine. So, like when I sent it in, actually, I just did it yesterday for next month. I have a digital content piece and then a print content piece. The digital one is kind of the full length, all of the thoughts and feelings that I had on that kind of micro topic, and then sort of the more like the cliff notes that get actually printed. Um, and it really just kind of grew from there. He and I had talked that there isn't a whole lot written in the industry about leadership and mentoring and growing teams, and we tend to focus on the safety pieces and the legality pieces and compliance pieces and all that. But he had felt that it might be a great little niche to unpack a little bit, and we're going on 2.5 years now of doing that. So in addition to that, I still do some shorter content stuff on my LinkedIn page on a weekly basis, just short thoughts.
Yeah.
They run kind of right in line with my attention span. Reading something on your phone, if you can't read it in 60 seconds, it's too long, because I'm not going to scroll through 3 pages on my phone, to read a story. So it's usually pretty quick hitting things. That's how it got started, and it's just kind of evolved from there.
Okay. So you came up through operations, branch management, then to regional leadership before landing where you are today with Legs and with your LP Gas magazine piece. For small business owners, they're generally the HR department, sales and marketing, they're everything. What does leadership look like from your perspective for small owners? Right. Granted, now you're the president of the Wisconsin Propane Gas Association, so you're dealing more with small, independent mid-marketers. What does that look like for them?
You mean on the leadership side?
Yeah.
Yeah. For them, I. That's a good question. Could take that a whole bunch of different directions. I think there's leadership in any size organization. I mean, even if you're just a company of 1 or 2 people, you still need to be aware that you're leading yourself. I mean, each of us individually, we have to lead ourselves first, um, before you can lead anybody else, and how you manage your way through that. And for me, I think leadership really begins between your own ears. I mean, if you're able to get your mindset straight on what you want to do, and where your compass is pointed and how you're going to get there, and then adjust those sails and course correct if you get a little bit lost. For smaller operations, if you have CSR and a driver and a tech with yourself, you're a company of 4, that's still a team that needs leadership. And many of the thoughts that I share, either through the magazine or through some weekly stuff, you know, they're not they're not just for business. You can apply them in your home life as well. As a spouse or a parent or a partner. If you coach a team, if you're involved in your church, there are people that naturally gravitate toward leadership, and those are some of the ideas that I'm trying to share. That it's not necessarily just for propane, but kind of for life in general. And one of the things that I've begun to live by for a number of years is leadership doesn't really come with a title, but it comes from a position of influence. Um, and when other people are turning to you, whether it's your staff or somebody in the congregation, you've naturally become a leader, and you owe it to yourself and you owe it to them, to give them that, regardless of the size of your operation. 2 people to 2,000 people.
I think we have all experienced, you have the title position or general manager, vice president, what have you, but then there's the actual leader of that organization, and they are not always the same person. And many times they're not the same person. There's the person that maybe provides the overarching guidance, and then there's the person that actually accomplishes the mission, right? The one that
Mhm.
people pay attention to. And it's really important from what you were just saying, like it's really important that we identify the leaders and we continue to develop those leaders in the industry so that they can continue to expand their area of influence and become
Mhm.
more effective, not just for the individual company or organization that they work for, but for the industry as a whole, right? We have to continue to develop that next layer. There's a lot of guys my age and older that are going to be leaving this industry in 10 years, and making sure that we have a strong bench of people coming up behind them to assume
Mhm.
that mantle is really important.
I couldn't agree more.
So you've been in the industry for 12, 13 years now.
Mhm.
From your perspective, what has changed in the industry first? And then second, what's different?
That's a great question. Kind of kind of a 2-for-1 there.
We're all about efficiency.
I feel like the core values of the industry have stayed pretty much the same. Like we were talking there at the intro, yeah, it's just a great group of people, compassionate people, people that care about the industry, they care about their families, they care about their customers, they care about our country, they care about their communities. Um, I think we all, for the most part, believe in what we do, and we work to make sure that everybody is safe. And if we look at the Upper Midwest here, one of the things that we take very seriously is we keep everybody warm, especially when that when that mercury gets to double digits below zero. It becomes a serious thing that we continue on that path. For the part of the question, what has changed? I would say technology in the amount of time that I've been in here, and for some of you that have been in the industry for 20 and 30 and 50 years, I'm still the new guy in the industry. But just in the time that I've been here, the implementation of technology and the industry embracing technology, um, we have technology and computers and data in every parts of our lives now. I mean, for crying out loud, we all carry a computer in our pocket most of the time, and it's generally never more than the end of our arm away. From remote tank monitors and their penetration into the field, and CRM software improving, and things becoming paperless, and tablets in bobtails. It seems to be moving faster and faster each year. Even though we're doing basically the same thing that we were doing 20 or 30 years ago, I feel like we're not necessarily competing with each other as much as we're getting that energy source to the customer. We're beginning to compete with people like Amazon and DoorDash, and name whatever your favorite vendor is that you engage with digitally, where you never talk to anybody. And being able to utilize that technology in our industry to give the customer a similar interaction feel, I think is incredibly important that we continue to do that. I have a short story. Can I interrupt with a short story for
Yeah,
my
sure. Good.
so just this past winter, I am a propane user at home, and got a text from one of our drivers, and it's a little bit different for me. I get that because I work for the company, but he had texted me, and he said, "Hey, I'm in your neighborhood. Do you need some gas?" And I'm like, I hadn't checked my tank in quite a while. I said, "Probably." So he swung by, and he filled it up, and within 20 minutes from the time he texted me that he was near the house, I had an email or excuse me, a text that he had arrived. 10 minutes later, I had a text that he was done, and I had my invoice digitally in my inbox, and the whole thing happened in about 20 minutes. Now,
Yeah.
that won't work for everybody, but to be able to have that kind of interaction, it was very much like getting an Amazon delivery. It's been shipped, it's been routed, it's been delivered. And I think as we continue to embrace that as a change, I think that'll be good for the industry all around, because it lines us up with everybody else that our customers are interacting with.
So I think that I agree completely with what you're talking about in terms of technology and the speed. I think there's been some periods of in the industry where technology's shift has changed the industry. So when I first started, we had a single cable tank trailer, right? And then we had hydraulic trailers, and then we
Hmm.
had boom trucks, and then we had gigantic boom trucks, and then we had bobtails that had meters that were able to print the ticket for you instead of having to handwrite things out. I think that the speed in which the customer response or communication is now coming, but I think the next area from my perspective is the integration of monitors, right?
Hmm.
There was a lot of hesitation for people to move that direction, but I think because driver challenges that we have sometimes, staffing, the access to data, there's more and more people that are moving to the technology piece using monitors to be able to more efficiently, effectively route. So I
Hmm.
100% agree with the industry itself really has not changed significantly, but the adoption of technology has really started to accelerate over the last 5 to 7 years, in my opinion.
I would agree. I'm a big fan of monitors. I really am.
So I
I,
think anybody that has gone down that path, like there was a lot of hesitation at first because, hey, it's a change to my business. But once they start seeing the access to data, and you can really put even for a person maybe that doesn't have a gigantic logistics platform, but you might have some customers that are on the outskirts of your area. If you're still working on pen and paper, the ability to see, okay, I don't have to go there
mhm,
today. There's still 40%. So I don't have to wait. I don't have to go. I can wait until they get 25% or what have you
mhm.
and make a more efficient delivery. I think the adoption of that technology piece is going to be one of the key drivers for future performance.
I would agree. The operational efficiency far outweighs the cost that
Yeah. Well, I mean, like Justin, I know you remember when we first started talking about monitors, they were 200 plus bucks, and just to buy the base unit, you had to have a dedicated phone line that went to that one, and it was
hmm
$6 a month or whatever it was. And now you have these plug and play. You clip it onto onto a new gauge. You do a couple of things on a keyboard, and bam, your monitor's up and running. Right? It's
hmm
fantastic the way that has moved forward.
I would agree.
All right, so I'm going to switch gears a little bit. We're going to talk about leadership and practice. Many small companies have built their many business owners have built their companies on hustle and hard work and relationships. At what point does just the hard work, is it no longer enough? When do you have to start looking for other avenues? How do you change your business, and how do you change your mindset when you get to a point that, okay, I can't just manage this by myself anymore?
In my opinion, I think that's the hardest step to take as an owner. The hustle that you put in is amazing, and that's what built the foundation of every successful company. But it's really only going to take you so far. As that owner, before you hit that wall, the wall where you are maxed out and you're tearing your hair out 7 days a week, and it consumes all of your life. I think before you get to that wall, you have to be mindful of the need to scale your operation. As that owner, as that leader, you need to be able to actually, as weird as it sounds, you need to be able to step backwards
Hmm.
and run that operation. I see a lot of managers that struggle with this, and they can't get past it into that next stage of leadership. That ability to delegate to somebody else is critical to the long-term success of scaling an organization that Hustle did build. As the one that hustled and formed the relationships, you need to focus on what made you successful, and then let your staff take care of the other tasks. I think as the leader, they need to focus on only what they can do. That's it. What is, if I were to look at it, what tasks are in front of me on a daily or a weekly basis that only I can do? I can't hand this one off because this one's mine, whether it's vision casting or whatever the case may be. I think the sooner that they can identify those tasks, and that becomes the main part of their work life or running their organization, and then getting into the mindset to just give the rest of it away. We all know, no matter, as a leader, no matter how much you give away, your plate fills back up pretty instantly.
Yeah.
And then you can give some more away, and then it fills back up. Of course, as that leader, you're gonna have to watch what you gave away to make sure that it's getting done, and it's getting done to the way that you like it. But let somebody else, tap the keys or turn the wrench or pull the hose, and focus on only what you can do. That's a mindset thing, and there are a lot of people fail right there, I believe.
Yeah, I would agree with it. And it seems like to me, in our experience with the companies that we've worked with, you can grow up to a couple of million gallons, 2.5, something like that, and still have pretty tight reins on that business. But once you get past that, right now you have to really be involved in supply planning. You can't just call a guy, because you need to make sure that your product is protected and covered for the next winter. Right now you have to talk
Mhm.
about, okay, staffing. Before it was me and two dudes in a truck or a couple of trucks. You get to a point where you have to make significant investments. And now, as the leader of that organization, you have to be, to your point, setting the vision and then bringing in the right people to help drive that vision forward.
It's hard as a leader to give some of those things away too. If you've been doing
100%.
them and you've been holding them, I mean, it's your baby almost to give it to Tim or to Tom or whomever. It's hard,
Well,
but
and
you have to.
it's an investment that's really hard to quantify, right? So I'm going to bring this person in, and I'm going to pay him probably a pretty good salary, and I'm going to give them work that I used to do, but I'm still going to watch really, really carefully to make sure they do it exactly the way that I want to do it. It's a
Mhm,
really difficult transition to go from an operator at a grassroots level to an owner over a multi-million dollar or multi-million gallon organization, right? That's a
mhm.
big switch. So what is the one thing that you constantly see in operators that are running strong, well-prepared businesses? What's the trait that you see in those people?
We just mentioned it, vision. That
Yeah.
that clear, long range vision. I think without that vision, you can fall victim to like the newest shiny thing that crosses your path. When you have that long range vision of where you see yourself or where you see your company in 2 years or 10 years down the road, it's a compass that you set and it becomes far easier to navigate. Now, granted, you're looking at the water in front of you, but you're looking off to the horizon. If you have that goal of being a 1 million gallon company, and you identify early on what you need to do to get there. How many customers do I need? Do I have key customers? How does this work? How do I get to 1 million gallons? If your goal is 10 million gallons, like we were just speaking about, that's a completely different mindset. And that takes a different roadmap with driver counts and the number of, or the amount of fleet that you need and your supply. Where's that going to come from? How am I going to buy it? Is it indexed? Is it fixed? Are there other hedges? There's a lot more that goes into that. And if you have that vision, then you have a direction. Without that vision and no map, you're just kind of going day to day and figuring it out. But if you set those benchmark goals, you're able to kind of track your progress. You're able to say, okay, I've done this. I've made it to this mark. I've made it through this gate. I've made it over this hill. So those were all successful. What worked, what didn't work, kind of looking at your, your KPIs or however you want to measure it. And having that vision sets those for you early on, and those become your targets. And that's, in my opinion, what I see from those successful companies is they have that roadmap.
So I want to pull on that string just real quick before I flip
Mhm.
it over to Justin. You've run a business as an owner, right? So you've run a business, you've got the 2 million gallons, you have a bigger goal. What are some tools or what are some thought processes that you can implement to begin to have more of a long range vision or a long range lens instead of, hey, I'm gonna make it to the end of this month, I'm gonna make it to the end of this 6 months, I'm gonna make it to the end of this year. Now you've accomplished all those things and you're trying to figure out what's my vision for the future and what steps do I take? What tools are available to help somebody through that process?
Well, I think if you were looking to expand, your gallons, because you wanted to go from 2 million to 5 million or 2 million to 3 million, if you feel like you have the correct amount of penetration in your initial home area, and you can do some quick math and say, I'm selling 2 million gallons and there are only 3 million gallons in my area total. Okay, you pretty much own that area. You're probably going to have to expand that footprint a little bit. You're going to have to get out into some new ground that you can farm. The NPGA, through their website, has a lot of that data already in there from the last census that was taken. You can get very, very granular based on a county or a fraction of a county. And if you're looking at your current territory and you know that, well, the county right next to me has 6 million gallons that are sold in it. Obviously, I'm talking upper Midwest numbers, depending on where you are in the country. You might not have 6 million gallons in half of the state. I don't know, but but around here you can have 6 million gallons in a county. You can say, okay, well, I can edge into this county without a great deal of infrastructure investment. I can still reach a little bit further, or maybe I do put a satellite tank out there. Maybe I open a second office. That's a big mindset shift, because then you're going multi-location. That brings a whole lot of other challenges with it as well. So I think if you use tools that PERC has, because they collect all that data, and NPGA collects all that data. I know personally, I've built a couple of step outs into new markets here with lakes. That was the very first place that I went. How many gallons are in this county? What do we currently have? And what does my opportunity look like?
Fantastic. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Mhm.
So at this point, I'm going to let Justin take over. He's got some questions for you.
Okay.
And we'll keep moving forward.
Okay.
Hey, you and Ryan had talked about like the mentorship and developing, employees, if you will, or the next generation of leaders, especially in the propane space. What does it actually look like in a propane company when you're talking about developing that next generation? And where do most operations fall short?
That's a pretty deep question. It's a pretty
I know.
critical one, though. Make me think on this one. I believe it starts with hiring the right people. Pretty much anybody can be taught propane, but it's hard to teach someone to be motivated. It's hard to teach someone to be curious. It's hard to teach someone to have a drive. It really doesn't work like that. I know when I interview and I hire, I don't ask the questions. Tell me about your experience. I mean, like, I can read a resume. I can see where you went to school. I can see what your last jobs were. I ask questions that are a little bit more, I don't want to say off-putting, but it makes them think a little bit. I'll ask them, hey, what motivates you to get out of bed in the morning? And you get a multitude of different answers. Some people are like, well, I need the money. Okay, so this is just a job then. I'm not really interested in that. But when they say, well, I get out of bed because I want to provide for my family and I want to take care of my kids and I want to do a good job. Okay, well, that's a little bit different personality. And then we kind of unpack that one a little bit. I also like to start with another question that, where I'll hold up their resume and say, well, I get all of this. Tell me about you. Tell me who you are. And you get a lot of great answers that way. I look more to hire the person and hire the fit. And I try and see the potential in somebody. Obviously, an interview is pretty much the, well, I shouldn't say this, it sounds bad, but I'll say it anyway. That's the best version of that person you're going to see because they want to come in right now. So if that's the best version, okay, let me back it off then 15 or 20% and say, can I live with that 80 that isn't this best version? Some people have surprised me. I will say that. I've interviewed them and thought, yeah, they seem like a pretty good fit. Then they get in and they get engaged and like they're amazing. I think, okay, well, I missed the mark on that one. Thankfully, I kind of undershot the goal and ended up with a hero. Currently, I think to the second part of your question, I mentor a few people, both inside my own organization and outside the organization. The hardest part to do for those of us in leadership positions now that are trying to grow those folks, and I think where we fall short is we don't make enough time to have the conversations, to answer the questions, to really ask them what they're thinking. What are you struggling with? And more times than not, when I get into one of these questions, they get into something very specific, very operational. Well, I've been having a trouble with this truck and I just can't keep this thing out of the shop. And I usually stop and go, okay, that's fine. It's a truck. We can fix that. How are you doing? How are you feeling? And I think as a mentor, we have to ask those questions. We have to take those folks that we've identified as future leaders, and we have to pull them up out of the weeds a little bit. We got to kind of get them off the side of the road and out of that ditch and get them up to that 10,000 foot perspective to say, okay, if you're going to operate at the next level, you need to be able to see all of this. We don't need to know what's just 100 yards in front of us. We need to know what's 12 months in front of us or what's 10 years in front of us as we make some of these decisions. So I think helping them step back is critical. Helping them open their vision a little bit to see the entire picture is critical. I know the folks that I mentor when they come to me with an issue or a problem that they want to talk about because they're looking for some guidance in it. They know I'm going to ask them a half a dozen questions before I give them any kind of answer. And I think it frustrates them sometimes because they're like, here's my problem. I'm like, okay, well, what have you done so far? Okay, well, I did this. Okay, and how did you come to that conclusion? And what are you going to do next? And what's your plan for this? And what's your plan for that? And there have been a few times they're like, just tell me what to do. I'm like, no. When I ask them another question, And by doing that, it leads them to their own answer. And I really think that's what makes a difference in mentoring and building that next generation is kind of showing them the thought process that goes into making a higher level decision. And they kind of get there on their own through their own answers, just by you as the leader or the mentor asking those right questions and kind of guiding them into the answer. They'll remember that one. They won't remember what I told them to do. They'll
Right.
remember the ones where they got there on their own.
It's kind of that people management, you can manage that person, like you said, teach them your thought process. I always found it easier for people to work for me if they understood how I thought, because then
hmm
they'll make decisions based on that as well.
hmm
But how about like workforce challenges, right? We say it's in propane right now, but I think it's been there for over a decade. But for drivers, tax, office staff, they're not easy to find or keep. So from leadership, what are the small operators doing well when it comes to retaining people?
From those that I interact with, I honestly think it's gratitude for their employees. We've all read, and I think I've said it before, that that people don't quit companies, they generally quit managers, they generally quit leadership. Compensation is always part of the equation, but you give somebody a raise and they're happy for a couple of weeks, but then it just becomes normal and you just kind of adjust to that. But when was the last time you gave somebody some honest feedback, some honest gratitude, a true thank you? And when was the last time you asked them about something personal? Um, you know, if you know that they want to go to their kids' track meet, you know, on Thursday, and you give them a half a day off or whatever the case is, did you ask them about the track meet afterwards? Did you ask how their kid did in the track meet? I mean, you form that bond and that connection, and then it becomes a little less, superior, subordinate, employee manager type relationship, and it becomes very real. You're treating them like a person. You're giving them what they need to not only be an employee, but to be a parent and to be a partner. Because we all know that when someone comes to work, you're getting 100% of that person, even though you might only be getting 20% of them, in a work day or as an employee or a staff member or whatever. They're still carrying all that other stuff with them. So if you can be mindful of it, be flexible, be human. Give them an afternoon off. Give them a Friday off if they're taking off for the weekend, and that comes just through conversations. And I think those little things can really go a long way. I mean, buy them lunch maybe once in a while, and I see a lot of smaller operators do that. Um, you know, I guess one thing for me that I like to do is in the wintertime, I'm generally in an office, most of the winter, because I like being there because that's where the work actually happens. That's where the customer interaction happens. I go out and brush everybody's car off at like 4:30 in the afternoon to get the snow off it. I mean, those CSRs have been on the phone dealing with your customers all day long. The drivers have been out there all day. They're frozen most of the time. They've been driving that thing around on cruddy roads. It's not a big thing, but it's nice. And they can go out the door at the end of the day, jump in the car and take off. If they're in the office, I'll even take their keys and go start their cars for them while I'm brushing it off. At least it's warm when they get in there. Hey, I can be cold for 15 minutes and brush off a half a dozen cars. I'll be fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, good one. So how about, so you've been a part of like acquisition integration. So you're bringing smaller companies under a larger umbrella. In the seat that you're in, what do independent operators consistently have right that larger companies sometimes lose?
The relationships with their customers. Personally, I don't speak directly to too many customers more than a few times a week. The smaller operators, I mean, they know everyone in town, and they know everything about them. I like being a part of those conversations in the office when customers come in to place an order or to pay a bill, and they're able to stand there with them at the counter for 20 or 30 minutes, and they talk about everything from what's going on at the school, or who didn't show up to church on Sunday, or did you see Jimmy down at the Moose Lodge for the fish fry on Friday? And it really makes me smile. I mean, being local is important. I mean, I know Lakes Gas as a company, has figured that out. That's one of our pillars to success, and we like to be in every community. But those local operators that are in that town are part of that town, and they get that right. Where some of the larger companies, I think, miss that. They see it as a number or an expense that we have to keep that office open. But if you're there and people can come in and interact with you, it's fantastic. Because I've said this a number of times, but I think propane is an oddly intimate industry, which sounds a little weird, but it's something that keeps us in our own kind of little niche lane as an energy provider. I mean, we're in their backyard. I mean, our guys are walking around the house, they're petting the dog, they're putting the flag back in or whatever. We're in their houses, for crying out loud, especially if you get an interruption of service piece. I mean, we're going into to check appliances and to check for leaks. I mean, we're providing one of their basic human needs to be able to cook food and heat their home. And that's what the smaller folks, they get it right. I really must say they get that right.
Yeah, I'd agree with that wholeheartedly. So how about let's think of on a national level. So your NPGA involvement's given you a view of the industry at a national level. What's being discussed at that level that small independent operators should be paying closer attention to? Spill it.
New technology. I think that's one. And even though I'm involved at that national level and I'm involved with PERC at a national level, I still miss it too. And I get down on myself sometimes that I'm not adopting everything out there that could possibly happen with propane. I mean, with the new technology that's out there and the expanding applications that are out there where we can use this, clean, domestic, safe fuel, the NPGA, National PERC, they are wonderful resources for what's coming next. Just go on to either one of their websites and see what's out there. Whether we're talking about combined heat and power, primary power generation, microgrids, propane-driven irrigation pumps. I mean, there's a port tractors. There's tons of stuff out there that is different than just residential space heating. And our friends and those folks that are paid to be on that national level, that's what they're talking about. to help protect our industry, not only protect what we already have, but also expand the industry. I will say I do have a concern though, as suppliers and marketers, we got to be willing to kind of stand up and do our part, whether that's fighting for legislation in our own states or in our own municipalities, being aware of kind of that anti-propane or anti-energy choice stuff. We have to. If we're talking the NPGA side, on that legislation side, we've got to be willing to do our part and say, I disagree with this legislation. You have to be willing to pick up that phone or drive to your state capitol or go to your congressman or your representative's local office and say, I disagree with this. I'm one of your constituents and I disagree. Or, I read this in the newspaper. I'd like to know your stance on this. Our industry can't operate under this kind of regulation, or we need an adjustment in that kind of regulation or that kind of legislation to be able to continue to do what we do. Which I believe, if we all would stand up and have that voice, our voice would be heard so much more quickly than just a handful of people in Washington, D.C. through the NPGA walking up and down those halls. I attend our state's propane day. I go to the national, propane day in D.C. The group is growing over the past couple of years, which is amazing to see. I think last year was one of the highest attended propane days we'd had in quite a while. And to be able to put that many people from our industry into congressional office buildings and into Senate office buildings, and you've got 150 people telling our story, even though it's only for one day, but you're telling your story to that many legislators, it resonates with them a little bit. Like, this is a thing, this is an industry, this affects a lot of Americans, and it's so much more than just heating your home or cooking a meal. It's with that technology coming, I don't know, now I'm getting all worked up here and I'm losing my words.
If I could jump in just real quick, the propane industry is really fractured, right? We have 4,000 companies in the United States, and we lean on NPGA and PERC to do most of the bidding for us. How do we get more independent marketers, mom and pops, small 2-3 million regional? How do we get more of those people interested in providing their voice at a community level?
I believe it starts with education first, and the second piece is we almost have to show them how it's done. I know that there's a whole lot of people that don't want to get involved in politics, and I am not a politician. I follow it a little bit just because of what I do with the NPGA, but those that I talk to that have never done it before, they're scared of it because they don't know what to say. I don't want to say something wrong. I can't reach out to my congressman because I don't know what I'm going to tell him. And what if he asks me a question that I can't answer? And I've said this to a number of them, like, in their mind, you're the expert. You know the industry. You know what we do here. You know about safety. And you know about regulation. You know about what does or doesn't work for your operation on the legislative side or however that, or the regulatory side. Just giving them some examples, giving them some comfort in the fact that if they do go and talk to a congressman, they're going to know 100 times more than that congressman or the staffer is ever going to know about our industry. So don't be afraid to answer a question. Even if you get it wrong, they're not going to know anyways, but just speaking up is really the piece that we need on that grassroots thing, like we talked about earlier. Just bring it up, say something, write an editorial. If you're passionate about something and you saw it in your local newspaper where somebody was bashing a fossil fuel or propane in general, write a counter editorial, put a different name on it for all that anybody cares. If you're worried about damaging your business, but just say something.
That's a great point. Thank you. Sorry for interrupting.
See, I'm getting all wound up here again.
Well, that concludes it for me, man.
So we have one question that we always ask. What does AI do to the future of the propane industry?
Ooh, wait, is that like a trick question? I don't know. Oh, I think it's still a little too early to tell, personally. I think it has a place in some of our data analytics. I've played with it a little bit with some test data just to push a fake operating report or a fake P&L through one to try and get an executive summary out of it, just to see what AI I know what I'm reading, but I want to see what AI thinks about it. And there's been some good and bad in my experience coming out of it. Where it's saying, well, your sales are down against your budget. Well, yeah, it's October. Like we haven't even hit the season yet. So
Right.
yeah, my sales are going to look pretty bad, but then, push that same report through in February and you're way ahead. So I think it's still lacking in that piece. I will say, personally, I use it to generate some images for some weekly post stuff. Just when you have a couple of ideas that you want to mash together into one image, it's a little easier than trying to, search through hundreds and hundreds of images on a Google search to find one that you think kind of fits the topic of a post. So I do utilize it. I think we need to be careful with it a little bit, and maybe it's because I don't know enough about it yet, but it seems like it's moving really, really fast. Now, on the propane side, if I can go off, we'll go down a different rabbit hole. So on the propane side, you're talking about building data centers, right? And they're building data centers, outside of certain municipalities where it's, beginning to get on that marginally rural type, um, type of area. Power is not always there, or not enough power, to be able to run one of those massive data centers. And if you listen to Tucker talk, if you ever get a chance to talk to him, ask him about AI data center power generation, and he will go on for 10 minutes about the opportunity that propane has to run that primary power grid for a data center. So as much as we might be a little bit scared about it, that's something else that I would kind of throw out to local marketers, some of those smaller marketers. Yeah, it would be a huge project to undertake. PERC can help you through it, but there's an opportunity for some serious gallons if any of those data centers have to run not on the grid. We've got opportunity there too. So I'm not totally against it, because we can burn some propane with it.
So I think for me personally, and I say this all the time, propane is a very physical industry. The need for somebody to drive a truck, to pull a hose, to do testing, like that is not going away anytime soon. There's going to be some transition in the back office platform. There'll be some streamlined ability for analytics on logistics or improving route efficiencies. But majority of this industry is still out in the field, and there's not robots developed that can drive the truck, that can do all the testing and perform all those pieces. So somebody, for me, if somebody's looking for a career for the next 30 years, propane's going to be around. Like Microsoft already announced they're going to reduce their coding by 80%. They're going to go to AI data models to write code for the future. Well, nobody said they're replacing 80% of the bobtail drivers. Nobody said that.
No, I agree. Drive up and down any interstate in this country. I mean, there are trucks and truck drivers everywhere.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a thing. Well, like we just said, it's intimate. You're into somebody's home. Good luck having AI do that. Crawl behind a stack of boxes to light a water heater.
So, Aaron, really appreciate the conversation. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about? Any other topics or any other strings you want to pull on that we have not discussed today?
As far as new topics, no. I would just encourage those folks that that partake and take in this content. Identify somebody to take your position. Identify somebody in your organization that you want to have your job, and don't be afraid of it. And if you don't have somebody that in your organization or in your staff or under your umbrella of responsibility that can replace you, then as a leader, you're not doing your job. I mean, I try and work with 2 or 3 different people who I want to have my job. I like it when people say, I want your job in the future. And it doesn't scare me in the least. I'm like, please do. Please come take my job, because I can't go on to anything else until there's somebody to backfill my position.
Right.
Well said. Continue to coach and mentor and train your own replacement, even if you're not going anywhere for 10 or 15 or 20 years. But get somebody ready.
Well said. Appreciate that. Thank you very much, Aaron. Justin, anything else?
I'm good, man.
Aaron, thank you so much again for joining us today. It was a great conversation.
Well, thank you. I very much enjoyed it. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.